Welcome to the program. Welcome to the show. This is Mark Vlogs Watches, and I am your host, Mark Goldberg. Before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this video right here, let's get the quick fist watch check out of the way. And here she is. Today, guys, where's camera? I'm wearing the Rolex root beer. Rolex, is it the best brand on earth? Is it the worst brand on earth? Are you angry at Rolex? Are you a Rolex fanboy, kind of like me? Well, let's talk about reasons that it is actually both the best and the worst of the horological world. Rolex. It's the one brand that everybody loves to hate. Let's jump into it right now. The meat and potatoes coming right up. Well, we're gonna start here with the love. I got a little notes down here, so I'm gonna check them out from time to time. I think the number one, we have to actually, we have to really face facts. Rolex is the highest brand name recognition in the world, and what that does is it gives you snob appeal if you have one. Everybody knows Rolex. Everybody. I mean, you could get parachuted into the Amazon jungle, and everybody there is going to know Rolex. Ah, Rolex. Actually, it's weird. I think that Cartier is probably the second best known brand. Now, we're not talking about highest horology because, as we probably all can admit, I'll, Piguet, Patek Philippe, Vacheron, and Constantin, these are brands, Jaeger-LeCoultre, these are brands that have higher horology or higher horological significance than do Rolex, and that's because they have far more complications that are in the complicated range. But that doesn't matter, and here's why, because nobody ever heard of them. Yes, I know watch collectors like ourselves know Aldi, Piguet, Patek Philippe, Vacheron, and Constantin. Why they all have kind of French sounding names, I don't know. And if you know anything about the French language, you know that you have to make your face and your tongue angry in order to say those names. But people, the fact of the matter is people don't know them. People know Rolex. And the Rolex was started by a guy named Hans Wilsdorf, an English guy who wound up in Switzerland. But the long and the short of it was, marketing genius. He actually created his own word. Rolex is a made-up word that Hans Wilsdorf made up because it could be pronounced easily by any tongue in the world, any language. He knew almost from day one that he was going to make it an international sensation, and he did. So reason number one that Rolex is the best brand is, it's the only brand that every single human being on earth knows as a watch brand. I mean, think about it. Everybody knows Seiko, but nobody bothers to steal them. And that's because Seiko, it's not so grand. Okay, the second reason number two that Rolex is the best watch brand in the entire world is that it's super robust. Rolex is water resistant, it's shock resistant, it's anti-magnetic. It has the Oyster perpetual case, which locks it together with a lot of gaskets. And even their watches that aren't terribly water resistant are extremely water resistant compared to other brands. You know, Patek Philippe, a lot of them have what they would call 30 to 50 meters worth of water resistance, which means basically you better be very careful in the rain. And you also better be really careful when you wash your hands. A little splash, you're probably okay. Drench it? Absolutely not. Rolex has parachrome shock absorbers for shock resistance, and what that does is it prevents, I'm not a horological guy, guys, but nonetheless, what the parachrome shock absorbers do is they prevent the escapement from getting jostled and throwing the timing of the watch all off. And then the mainspring is made, it's a parachrome hairspring mainspring, and what that means is that little interior spring, thin as a human hair, that winds up and provides power to the movement, that is made out of non-ferrous, non-magnetic materials. So watches, it used to be if you got them near x-rays, refrigerators, speakers, cell phones, iPads, anything that has magnets in it, which is today is everything, that movement was going to get thrown off, and the mainspring would get magnetized. When the mainspring gets magnetized, it starts sticking to itself, and that causes typically the watch to run much faster than normal. And that can be a problem. Okay, but Rolex doesn't suffer from any of that. It's a super robust, you can knock it around, you can do almost anything in a Rolex. You can live in a Rolex. Also, a lot of these fancy pantsy brands put their watches on leather straps, and you go out in the heat and those things over the course of a year or two, they turn into, you know, like taffy. They become like wearing sticky Swedish rotten fish on your wrist, whereas Rolex is primarily worn on bracelets, and those things are super robust. Look at this. Nothing bad gonna happen to this other than a few scratches which could easily get polished out. This is a super robust watch compared to watches made by technically finer brands, unpronounceable, and finer brands. But this one can be, I can do anything in this watch, and I could go snorkeling, I could go practically diving in this watch. Even though it's not a diver's watch, I could do it. And try and do that in a Patek Philippe. Good luck to you, sir. The third reason, number 3, why Rolex is the best brand on earth is even in this down market, this watch, this brand tends to have better value retention than any other brand. No, I know things are in a little bit of a down phase. There's no doubt about that. But nonetheless, you know, you don't buy a car, drive it off of the lot, and then expect to be able to sell it the next day for more money than you paid for it. We understand with vehicles that there's going to be a certain amount of appreciation. But certain vehicles appreciate slower and others just torpedo. And this is the brand that right now, if it's depreciating at all, it's much slower. So your money is safe when you lock it up in a Rolex. You're going to be able to get all or most of your money back. And in some cases, some of these brands will even be able to get, or some of these models, you'll be able to get a bit more than what you paid for it, which is probably the case with this particular one right here. Rolex has value retention, and that ties back to brand recognition. It's just super popular. Number 4, reason number 4 that Rolex is the best brand in the world is they make a very large range of sporty watches. And today we are less formal than we used to be. I bet sales of suits, ties, dress shoes, I bet all that stuff is way down. Casual Friday is what everybody is doing every day of the week for the most part now. And Rolex is basically a sporty watch. Now they have some like the day date, which sort of straddles the line between formal and informal, but a lot of these other brands are, Patek Philippe is the main one I'm thinking about. Most of their watches are very dressy looking, and that is not nearly in as much favor as it is these days. So this is a sporty, robust brand that retains value, and it's the brand that everybody always remembers. And look, it's kind of a little hard to get. So everybody wants what they can't have, and that's like the final thing that's really good. Reason number 5 is it's hard to get, and that makes people love it more. I mean, you don't want everything that you can have. You want what is difficult for you to acquire. So those are the 5 things that make Rolex the best brand of watch in the entire world. But when we flip the script, when we turn the coin over, that 5th reason, the fact that it's hard to get, is actually the first reason as to why Rolex is the worst brand on earth and why so many of you are just pissy and angry about Rolex. And that is, it's easier to adopt a child than it is to buy a Rolex at the AD. I mean, if you're going to the AD, you're probably going to have to bring 5 years worth of tax returns, and you're going to have to romance. You're going to have to romance staff there. You have to form a relationship. I mean, you don't have to form a relationship to go into an Omega boutique and buy an Omega watch. You just need a credit card. Rolex, you have to buy them dinner before you can do the transaction. So, and it really, really, really enormously pisses people off. And I understand that. If you don't have the relationship, it can be very, very tough to make one. And frankly, even if you do have a relationship, which is to say you've bought Rolex from an AD, it's not like you can go in there and just get anything you want. You still have to schmooze, and it can take time. So really, probably the single most irritating thing about Rolex that makes it one of the worst brands in the whole world is you can't just buy one. You can't just buy one, and I think that that's super irritating to most collectors. But, you know, would you really want it if you could just buy it all that easily? But nonetheless, irritating. You can't just buy one. The second reason why Rolex is kind of a sucky brand is that they make very few fun new introductions. Very few. Look at Tudor. Tudor's coming out with, you know, do you want a chronograph with a pink dial that looks like Pepto-Bismol? Well, they have it. Here's a picture. Okay, they're only making a few of those, but nonetheless, you know what I'm saying. Rolex creates evolution in their line very, very, very slowly, only tiny little incremental changes. And what that means is, if you're looking for fun and happy introductions from Rolex, you're barking up the wrong tree. You are definitely not going to find it with Rolex. And in fact, I can think of two things that they did last year that were kind of whimsical and fun that really freaked out collectors. One is the puzzle piece day date, and the other one is the celebration dial OP41. And here's the reality. You can't buy either one of those watches. So Rolex finally comes out with a couple things that are a little bit enjoyable, a little bit fun, not so freaking conservative, not so incremental, but actually wild, crazy fun. And guess what? You can't buy them. You might want them, but you not only can't you buy them, but you're probably never even going to see one in the wild. And that's freaking irritating, Rolex. So Rolex, you're just no damn fun. Let's put it like that. And then number three, I think, and this is for my money, number three, this is the last and the worst thing that you could say about the Rolex brand. And that is because it has value retention, because it was investable for a few years there, and because it has such extreme high name recognition, it drew the wrong element into the brand. And by the wrong element, I mean carpetbaggers, people who actually really have minimal or no interest in watches, but they just got into buying Rolex because they thought that they could make a quick buck. You know, I have a good friend who's very, very sharp with money, very smart guy, and he's all into Bitcoin and trading options, and he does very well because he studies a lot. And he called me up after the Forbes article saying that Rolex was highly investable. And he asked me, should I get into watches? And I said, no, no, you don't care. And I said, no, you don't care about watches. You wear an Apple Watch, for God's sakes. You know, buy the things that you know that you like. When you're buying retail consumer goods, you just buy the stuff that you like, and you don't like watches, bro. So, you know, don't get started. And I believe he listened to me, and I think he was lucky because the market crashed, you know, not less than a year later, which, by the way, didn't affect me at all because I did not buy this to sell it. I didn't buy any of my Rolexes to sell them. I bought them to wear and enjoy. And here's number four, the thing that makes Rolex the worst brand. The last thing is, they're really stealable. Okay, the fact that they are so damn good makes them so damn bad, and that is, you have to be really careful where you wear a Rolex. Where you wear. Anyway, you have to be really careful about that fact. I'm just saying, guys, that you have to think twice where you wear a Rolex, especially depending on which one. There are people out there who are specially trained to clock your clock. You go to a fancy bar or restaurant in a big city, and what you don't know is there might be spotters right in that bar. Maybe the maitre d', maybe that friendly bartender, perhaps the bouncer. They just notice what you're wearing and they beep, boop, boop, hey, friendly, you know, table 13. And there are all kinds of videos about people getting robbed literally in or right outside of restaurants and clubs wearing Rolex. So for me, it's actually one of the worst things about the brand. And that is, you buy these expensive things and then you have to worry about how much you can actually enjoy them out in the free world because they can represent a real security risk. And the antidote to that, if you will, is that you just insure what you intend to wear. And that's what I have done. I have thought of a bonus piece of hate, the last one, and that is Rolex has raised their prices ridiculously high, far faster than the rate of inflation. And that's because they're really shooting to become Patek level exclusivity with Rolex quality. And that's super annoying. They have just made them ridiculously expensive, insanely fast. Guys, Rolex, it's the best brand, it's the worst brand. What do you think about all of this nonsense? Let me know and talk to me in the comments, subscribe to all that stuff. We'll talk to you soon. Goldberg, peace out.